common is what happened to this victim? How common is that? Do you see this often?
Yeah, unfortunately, every single day we're receiving 20 to 25 calls on our hotline. Every single day, 365 days a year, of people who are experiencing some form of abuse in their relationship, and whether they are dealing with physical abuse in that moment, are fearful of it, have been threatened with it, or have experienced it, and know that they're in danger. And it's a horrible thing to think that that many people every single day in our community are facing that threat or have just experienced the fulfillment of that threat.
This is a law enforcement officer, and you said you were going to do some research here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know for a fact that domestic violence cases are high among law enforcement?
There are studies out there that show that there are higher rates in law enforcement than the general community. But what I would say is it's high everywhere. It's far too high everywhere. And we are, as an organization, as a community, hopefully, here to support law enforcement and law enforcement officers in getting the help that they need, just as much as we are here to make sure that anybody in the community gets the help that they need. Law enforcement or any other profession, unfortunately, just isn't exempt from this. Just because they're set to enforce those laws, or because somebody's a celebrity or well known or has money or any of the other things that somehow we want to tell ourselves exempts them from this happening, or exempts them from doing it, just isn't the case. This exists across all demographics, all professions, all socioeconomics. And that's the problem, is that it's so pervasive, it is everywhere. And so we can't tell ourselves, well, it's only this or only that, or not this or not that. We've got to wrap our heads around the fact that it's everywhere. And so we as a community have got to figure out that we want to do this differently.
This part is disturbing. The defendant broke down the door and punched the victim in the face. The victim went unconscious.
Yeah. It's very scary to think about that. When somebody loses consciousness, when there's a lot of strangulation that takes place in domestic violence situations that causes people to lose consciousness, you're talking about a high risk of lethality, the high chance that somebody's going to get killed in one of these situations. And we want to hide from these terrible details. We want to pretend that that stuff doesn't exist. It's why so many people don't want to talk about the issue of domestic violence. But we have to. We've got to talk about the gory details, not from a place of sensationalizing it or from, not putting weight to situations that don't have those kind of details, but we can't hide from it either. We've got to face the reality, and maybe that is what gives us as a community the motivation to do something different about it and to hold people to account.
He admits to punching her in the face. He denied placing her in a chokehold, but he also said it did not justify him punching her. He did not justify that.
Yeah.
Is that a classic trait of an abuser?
Again, I can't speak to the situation or these people, but I can say that it is a very common thing for people to commit acts of abuse, acts of violence, and then look to minimize or deny those things, to justify them in some way, to themselves, let alone to others. And I think that's part of it too. They certainly are looking to, in many cases, kind of get off the hook, not be accountable for what they're doing, but I think most of the time they're also trying to convince themselves that there was justification for what they did, to convince themselves that what they just did wasn't as bad as it really was. So yeah, it's a really common thing for folks to commit these acts of violence and then not want to be accountable for what they've done.
But in this case, I mean, you're saying this is across the board, but this is a man who was sworn to uphold the law, and here he is breaking it.
Yeah. I think it just tells us that nobody's exempt. It doesn't matter what our job is, and it doesn't even matter what we know or don't know. We are still prone to look to control situations. We know that a lot of why abuse takes place, particularly male violence against women, is because we've learned it, because we get away with it more often than not, and because it works. It makes our lives easier when we get our way. And that's often why male violence against women takes place. And so even if we are know that it's wrong, when those factors are in place, we often still choose that path. And that's what we at Emerge are looking to change, is for people to see differently what is considered okay and not okay, to change what we learn, what we're teaching our children about what is okay and not okay, how to see ourselves as men, how we view women, etc. But if we don't change those things, and if the community does not decide that's no longer going to be considered okay, not just to, we'll look at an individual case like that and say, oh, wow, that was wrong. But we'll also turn around 2 seconds later and laugh at a joke that objectifies women. Or we'll turn around 2 seconds after that and decide, well, yeah, that was bad to hear that somebody punched someone in the face, but, I'm not doing that bad. I'm just doing X, fill in the blank. I'm just whatever. And we continue to justify our actions and compare ourselves and say, well, at least it's not that. But it's all the same.
So why do people do this? Is it control?
It is. It's all about power and control. And it's because we learn to do it. We are taught, particularly when it comes to male violence against women, we are, as men, taught that we are supposed to be aggressive, that we're supposed to be tough, that we're supposed to be in control. And when that gets reinforced at every turn, I know what I get high fives for from my guy friends and what I don't get high fives for. And as I continue to learn through that process what it means for me to be a man and how I'm supposed to show up, it just reinforces I'm supposed to behave in a certain way. And it's okay to do these things to women because primarily they're objects. And I'm not necessarily consciously thinking that. I'm not necessarily looking at my partner and saying, oh, there's an object in front of me. It's more insidious than that. It is more subconscious than that because it just surrounds us, that that's what we're taught is how to be a real man. And so then why are we surprised that if we teach our boys that that's how they're supposed to be, then why are we surprised that they might use violence? We've got to change what we're teaching our children about that if we want to see a change in those behaviors in the relationships they're in.
But there is help.
There is help. There is help for both parties, and I think that's an important piece of this. Absolutely, there is help for people who are experiencing domestic violence and abuse and control in their relationship. Emerge has a whole array of services, 24-hour crisis hotline, an emergency shelter, small housing program, community-based services, including a lot of court-based services to help people navigate the legal system. And there is also help for the abusive partner. We want to frame the abusive partner as a monster, and absolutely they regularly do monstrous things. But at the end of the day, they're people. And if we want their partners to be safer, we have to take those people and help them make changes. And that's another piece that Emerge is here to do, is to work with men who are using abusive behaviors to unlearn the things that we've learned that create the belief systems that lead to these kind of violent behaviors. And so there is help to do different and be different.
Give me bottom line on this. Give me bottom line. Just wrap this all up.
Yeah.
less than 30 seconds.
Yeah. Sure, sum up domestic violence.
Yeah, right.
I think the bottom line is that we need help in doing different sometimes. We need help in getting out of situations that are incredibly dangerous. And Emerge is here for that. We need help sometimes stopping using these abusive behaviors or leaning on the idea of control as a way to be in a relationship. And Emerge is here for that too. What Emerge needs then is the community to back us in doing that. We need the community certainly to support our work, but we need the community to also do that for everybody in your circle. For the people you know, are you willing to reach out to that person you know is being victimized and offer them support and a connection to help? And are you also willing to reach out to the person who's using the abusive behavior and offer them help as well? Are we willing to get involved instead of standing back from it because it feels scary? If we're not willing to get involved, then we're not willing to see it change.